Thank you for being here today. My name is Rhonda Binda, and I'm your Queens Deputy Borough President. On behalf of Borough President Donovan Richards Jr., I would like to begin by thanking our co-sponsors of today's event, Hazak, Democracy NYC, Faith in New York, Queens Public Library, and Rothschild Village, Inc. These co-sponsors, along with members of the Queens Civic Engagement Committee, worked in tandem to put this event together. Thank you very much for your participation and all of your hard work. Welcome to the third Ranked Choice Voting Training webinar. As we near early voting on Election Day, it's imperative that our Queens communities and residents are brought up to speed about ranked choice voting. Today's webinar will serve as a how-to on ranked choice voting, covering everything that voters will need to know before heading out to the polls or submitting their absentee ballots. There will also be an interactive mock ballot exercise, which I'm excited to participate in with all of you here today. There's a lot at stake in this upcoming election. New Yorkers will be voting for the mayor, public advocate, comptroller, city council, and of course, all 5 borough presidents. The start of early voting is just 4 days away. I urge all eligible New Yorkers to take advantage and go vote early. There are 19 early voting sites all across Queens, including right here at the Helen Marshall Cultural Center at Queens Borough Hall. The objective this evening is for each of you to walk away from the webinar with a much better understanding of how ranked choice voting works and what it is. Please share the information that you learn here today with your family, your friends, and fellow community members, available on YouTube after the program. There's a lot at stake in this year's election cycle. Not only is voting your right, but increasing the number of people that vote in our elections allows for better representation, better quality of life for all in our city. With that being said, I would like to now pass it over to Nestor Medina, Outreach Lead from Democracy NYC, who will get us started with the mock ballot exercise. Thank you, Nestor.
Thank you so much for those warm welcomes. Deputy Binda, it's exciting to be here today on behalf of Democracy NYC. And so, yeah, I think I'm also here joined with my colleague, Tirtho, who's going to be working behind the scenes, putting up links, important links, and answering questions as well about ranked choice voting. But at this very moment, I'm going to ask Tirtho to put that link up, the mock ballot game. And so this game is actually pretty cool. It's pretty interactive. It allows you to get the feel, right? To get the feel of what it is to vote, using this new system of voting called ranked choice voting. And you'll be voting on your favorite landmarks, right? So Deputy, I'm not sure if you're able to pull that up on your end, but essentially we encourage everyone who's joining to click on the link and to access the game. And we're going to be able to take a look at the results at the very end. Okay. So for those here, are we going to go through that visual right now, or are we going to wait until the end? Awesome. So this is what the mock ballot looks like. You're going to be voting on your favorite landmarks. There are several Queens landmarks that you'll see there, and it's going to be cool to see how we vote. And once we learned about how the process works, how ranked choice voting works, actually it's gonna make a lot of sense. But this is a way for you to get the feel of what it is what you're going to be experiencing on June 22nd, or if you decide to vote early using this new system of voting called ranked choice voting. And I will start the presentation in a few moments. Awesome. So at this very moment, then I think I can share my screen, correct? And I can start this presentation.
Correct.
And just give me a moment to pull up my presentation. Okay. And let me know when you see my screen. So I believe that you're seeing my screen. So
Yep, we see it.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So once again, I'm Nestor with Democracy NYC, and welcome to our voter education workshop, How Local Elections Work and Why They Matter. Here's a brief look at our agenda. We're going to learn a little bit about what we do here at Democracy NYC, who we are, what we do, what's new with voting laws and voting rights, local elections, what's at stake, and who's on the ballot, and of course, our event, which is ranked choice voting, right? Ranked choice voting. We're going to dive deep into that and break that down so we can have a full understanding about how it works. And then voter resources before you get to the polls. At your poll site, if you're a first-time voter, we're going to have a special announcement at the very end about ways that you can get involved with the work we do here. And of course, we're going to have a question and answer segment, right? Where you can share your questions, you can give us your comments and all of that. But we're going to encourage you to, or recommend rather that you save your questions to the very end, unless if you want to post them on the chat. And as you saw already, this is the mock ballot game. And we will continue here. So yeah, so Democracy NYC is a city nonpartisan initiative that works to increase voter participation in elections. And part of our mission is to encourage every New Yorker to make their voice heard at the ballot box. And so there is a lot at stake, right? Right now with the upcoming primaries. We at Democracy NYC are not only working hard to make sure that voters are educated about the different ways they can vote, whether that is voting early, voting on election day, or voting by absentee, right, or by mail. But we also have this important task ahead of us, right, of educating people about this new system of voting called ranked choice voting. And we're going to dive deep into that today. But aside from that, our goal is also to register new voters and encourage all New Yorkers to make their voices heard and help shape their communities. But first, we're going to take you on a brief history, right, of voting rights. And we're going to go back all the way back to 1870. The 15th Amendment is ratified, giving Black men the same right to vote as white men in this country. And we fast forward to 1920, the 19th Amendment is signed into law. This gives women throughout this country the right to vote. And in 1965, Congress passes the Federal Voting Rights Act to ensure that no person is denied the right to vote, regardless of their race or color, right? And in 1967, previously, Black folks in this country had been divided among several predominantly white districts, right? Which impeded true representation, right? But in 1968, Shirley Chisholm got elected as the first Black woman ever in the US House of Representatives. And since then, congressional, state, legislative, and city council districts have been drawn so as to ensure minority representation. And in 1975, amendments to the Voting Rights Act required that election information be provided in Spanish and many other languages that are within the Asian, Native American, and Alaskan Native diaspora. And moving forward to 1989, New York City elects its first and only mayor of color, David Dinkins. And I do remember him. I was very young. I do remember Mayor Dinkins. And in 1993, city voters approved a ballot measure that would term limit citywide officials, including the mayor, as well as the borough presidents and members of city council to 2 consecutive 4-year terms. And in 2019, New York state legislature passes historic voting rights, including early voting and expanding pre-registration for minors. So what's new? New voting laws and who can register to vote. So as of January 19, as of January 2020, if you're 16 or 17 years old, you can pre-register to vote. And when you register as 16 or 17, upon turning 18, they will automatically be added to the voting rolls and will be eligible to vote in the upcoming election. And in order for them to pre-register, individuals must be at least 16 years old. 16, 17, and 18-year-olds can utilize the same registration form when registering or pre-registering to vote. Voting rights and justice involvement. Yes, this is fairly recent. As of last month, Governor Cuomo signed into law a measure that restores voting rights for people on parole. Essentially, this allows individuals who are not in prison for a felony conviction the right to vote. So this includes all New Yorkers on parole or probation. New Yorkers being released into parole automatically have their voting rights restored. Early voting. So aside from being able to vote on election day, we also now have early voting, and this is something fairly recent as well. So 10 days before election, there are 9 days of early voting, which includes 2 weekends and mornings and evening hours as well. So practically there is almost no excuse for you not to go and vote. Local elections, what's at stake and who's on the ballot? Impact of local elections. All politics are local and affect your daily life. What does this mean? So we've been taught from very early in our life that voting on general elections, voting on presidential elections is very important, right? And we can't take that away. It is very important. But sometimes I think the challenge is that we forget about local elections, right? And local elections matter, and they matter in a big way because they impact us. They impact where we live. The living conditions that we live, right? The conditions in our community, the way that our schools are being funded, the way our streets are being cleaned. All of these things impact us in the community, and so is why we urge and we encourage everyone to take part in this important process, right? Voting on elections, voting on local elections to make sure that you're electing individuals who are truly looking after the interests and the benefits of the community. So again, local elections have an impact on every part of our lives. And jumping quickly to the last bullet point here, local government is where change can happen the fastest when nothing is moving on the federal level. Local politics have a long history of shaping change in our country from the ground up. And one of the things that makes me, things that I think about when I read this is, for instance, on the local level, on New York State, the minimum wage was recently increased, right, to $15 an hour. This was a big achievement, right? And it was a hard fight fought by labor activists, by fast food workers, and by everyday people, right, pushing for this measure, right? And finally, we had, there was the increase of the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And on the same vein, we can see that this fight now is being fought on a federal level. We are seeing advocates fight for this, for a $15 minimum wage, a living wage, right? And so absolutely true, these fights start on a local level. So who's on the ballot and what can they do? So at the very top, we have the mayor's office. As we most of us know, the mayor's actually term limited, and so they will be moving on into doing other things. And so there are candidates now seeking this seat, right? This office. And so the mayor is the leader of city government and can make sure that the city addresses the issues that matter to New Yorkers, from jobs to education to housing and beyond. And the mayor has a lot of responsibilities, right? A lot, many responsibilities, but we can mention here a few. They enforce laws on how land should be used in city neighborhoods for businesses, affordable housing, parks, etc. They provide housing assistance services for the homeless, able to enforce workplace laws, including wage and sick leave policies, establish programs to provide families with childcare and early education. But the list goes on. And of course, we have the public advocate, another important office, right, that this city has. And the public advocate is the people's representative in city government and is responsible for looking into complaints about city agencies and services in areas like jobs, education, or housing. Again, the public advocate has a lot of responsibilities, but one of the things that we can mention here is that they advocate for tenants' rights, right? And one of the things that makes me think about this role is that every year there is the landlord's watch list, right? The landlord's watch list, where they list, it's a report that lists 100 of the worst landlords in this city, right? And I encourage you to go into their website, to the public advocate's website, and learn more about what that job entails. It's a very important job, and it's there for the benefit of the people of this city. And the controller is the city's chief financial officer and sets rules for how the city can spend its money. The controller audits the city budget and determines fair funding for better housing programs, improving public schools, and criminal justice reform. They work with the mayor's office to issue and sell bonds, which are used to pay for building cities' roads and bridges, etc. And again, I encourage you to look at their website now, because they regularly release reports on how the city, how agencies are spending their money. Are there discrepancies, and you'll find all of that on those reports. So get acquainted with the work they do, with important work they do. Then we have the borough presidents. Each borough has a president, and as advocates of their boroughs, borough presidents make sure that community needs in areas like housing, jobs, education, public safety, and more are met. And they have the power to utilize 5% of the city's budget, that is $4 billion, to create affordable housing units, stimulate the local economy, right? Small businesses, skill learning programs in local schools. So they also fund the local community-based organizations to provide legal health and social services to low to moderate income families and individuals in their boroughs. And then we have the city council, and the city council is the lawmaking branch of New York City's government, and is divided into 51 different districts with one member in each district. They negotiate changes to the mayor's proposed city budget and can fund new programs in New York City schools, specific health programs, etc. Pass laws to make school buildings safer, set penalties for parking or traffic violations. And one of the other things that I think about of the city council is your local city council, right? They are an important voice, right, in your community. Going back to what I was mentioning before about the living conditions, right, in your building, conditions in your neighborhood. They are the individuals that we go to when we want to bring change, right, into our neighborhoods. And so they're a great voice. They have a lot of power. That office holds a lot of power. And so I encourage you, that's a good place to start in addressing the issues that you feel are important, that need change in your community. So 2021 primaries on June 22nd, and I want you all to keep this date in mind. We are going to have ranked choice voting. It's going to be citywide, And we're going to be getting into this in a moment and breaking this down. But first, some key dates. May 28th, unfortunately, the deadline to register to vote in person passed already. So I'm going to move to June 15. That is the deadline to request an absentee ballot, right? If you're interested in voting by mail. And from June 12th through June 20th, we have early voting for primary elections. And we mentioned before that these are 9 days of early voting that include 2 weekends, mornings and evening hours as well. And of course, we have June 22nd, primary election day. All right, so now we're going to get into ranked choice voting. You get to rank up to 5 candidates. Okay, so what is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting is a new way to vote this year, which was approved by 74% of voters in a 2019 ballot referendum. And instead of choosing just one candidate, you may now rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference instead of just one. And ranked choice voting will be used in special elections and primaries for New York City offices only. And we're going to emphasize that a few times on why that is important. So to our left, primary elections that will have ranked choice voting, the mayor's office, of course. There is a race going on right now. The public advocate, the controller, borough presidents, and city council, right? And to our right, primary elections that will not have ranked choice voting, most definitely not the president's office, the governor, the Congress, the state legislator, and district attorney. I do want to make a note that there are elections happening, on June that will not incorporate, right, implement this new system of voting. And I'm referring to the district attorney's race in Manhattan, for instance. And then there is also other elections happening. For instance, in the Northwest part of the Bronx, there is a civil court judge race as well. So just be aware that there are elections happening across the city that will not implement this new system of voting. What's different about ranked choice voting? First, no more runoffs for mayor, controller, public advocate, borough presidents, the local offices that we have mentioned. And we've learned that runoffs tend to be very expensive, right, to run, and they have a low voter turnout. This eliminates that process. In order to win an election, a candidate must receive an overall majority of the votes, which is different from the way that we've been voting, right? The winner take all system, right? Which a candidate doesn't need to receive an overall majority of the votes, but clearly with ranked choice voting, a candidate must receive an overall majority of the votes. And candidates may need a broad coalition of voters to win. A candidate who isn't your top choice could still be your number 2, 3, 4, or 5. On this idea of a broad coalition of voters, what we're saying is that candidates are going to have to, work a little harder, right? They're going to have to attract a broad coalition of voters, because to some voters, they may not have a particular candidate as your top choice, but they may have them as their second, third, and so on. Another thing that we're seeing, where these elections have taken place, that we're seeing cross endorsements, right? We see that candidate A, for instance, will say voters, put me as your top choice and put candidate B as your second choice. But candidate B will say, no, voters, put me as your top choice and put candidate A as your second, because we both stand on the same page, for instance, on social justice or on housing justice, for instance. But it's going to be interesting to see how this unravels for the upcoming primaries, to see what candidates actually do that. But it'll be interesting to see. Okay, so the sample New York City ballot, right? This is basically how the ballot is going to look like. Just keep in mind that your ballot may have more candidates, for instance, or it may have more pages. But essentially, what you're going to see is that the name of office for elections at the very top, and area to rank candidates, where the ovals are at, this is where you're going to rank the candidates or candidate. Name of candidates running for the office to the left of that. Okay, so now we're going to show you a brief video, about 2 minutes or so. This breaks down the process in very simple terms. And what we're going to do is that we're going to reinforce that with a real life example, right, of ranked choice voting. So I'm going to play this now, and I'll catch you at the end of this video.
Here's how ranked choice voting works. On your ballot, you'll see candidates listed in rows and numbered rankings in columns. Pick your first choice and completely fill in the oval next to their name under the first column. Like always, you can just vote for your one favorite candidate and submit your ballot. But you might like several people. If you have a second choice, fill in the oval next to their name under the second column. Do the same thing for your third, fourth, and fifth choices if you have them. A few don'ts. Don't rank the same candidate more than once. It won't help them, and it takes away your chance to rank the others who are running. Don't give the same rank to multiple candidates. It could disqualify your ballot. Don't worry. This is a new process, and you can always ask a poll worker for help or for a new ballot if you make a mistake. So, how do ballots get counted with ranked choice voting? If one candidate gets more than 50% of everyone's first choice votes, they win the election right away. That's it. If no candidate gets more than 50%, ballots will be counted in rounds. Round by round, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. So, if your top-rated candidate is eliminated, your vote goes to your next highest choice. This keeps going until only 2 candidates remain. The person with the most votes wins. Here.
All right. So again, a reminder, if there are people just joining us, there is a interactive mock ballot, RCV mock ballot game that we put at the beginning of this presentation. This allows you to get the feel of what it is to vote by ranked choice voting. And so you're going to be voting on your favorite New York City landmarks. So if there's a chance to put that link up again, you can access it. And we're going to give the results at the very end. Okay, so continuing on here, we may not know the winner on election night. The winner of some or all races may not be known on election night. And this shouldn't come as a surprise for those that we've seen past elections. There isn't a winner, in some races, there isn't a winner declared on that very night. It takes days, it takes weeks sometimes. So in some RCV elections, there is a winner in the first round. This is what actually happened in Council District 31 in the special elections, right, that we had in Queens, where there was a candidate that was able to receive at least 50% of the votes, and they were declared the unofficial winner. So if a race is closed, the winner may not be known for a week or more until all the absentee ballots are opened and all votes are counted. Ranked choice voting, rather than spend time and money on attack ads, and this goes back to what I was saying before about the broad coalition of voters, candidates trying to attract that broad coalition, right? This goes on the same veins. So rather than spend time and money on attack ads, candidates in ranked choice voting elections can focus on leading more substantive issue-focused campaigns. More diverse candidates will have the chance to win the elections, and more representatives of our underrepresented communities will have the chance to be in office. Okay, so more people of color are holding office at a higher rate with ranked choice voting. In the past decade, I think I went a little bit too much. Yeah, in the past decade, 156 ranked choice elections took place in the US, and 48%, that's 109 out of 227 of the individual seats contested were won by women. And of the women winners, 38% were women of color. Remarkable. And at the start of 2020, half of all mayors and 49% of all city council seats decided by ranked choice voting are held by women. All right, so now we're gonna get into the real life example, a real life example of ranked choice voting. So to our right, we have the list of candidates. Very important to note that the gentleman you see to your left, the top left, Sean Sullivan, he is the incumbent, right? And to our left, we have the breakdown of the ethnic and racial background of the people that live in this district, right? And we clearly see that this is a very diverse community. We see that 38 or 36.8% of the people that live here are Black, 29.2% are white, 18.9% are Asians, and so on. But you get the point that this is a diverse community. Okay, so candidates with fewest votes get eliminated until 2 remain, right? And so we see that for this election, a candidate wasn't able to achieve or to receive, right, at least 50% of the vote. So it set off the rounds, as you can see. And this went on until 5 rounds. We see that Sean Sullivan, you know, in round 1 with 26.10%, had this been a winner-take-all system, for instance, you know, outside of ranked choice voting, clearly he would have won, but you know, we are dealing right now with ranked choice voting. So Lynette Gibson McElhaney got 23.71% of the votes, and Aisha DeWitt with 17.78%. But as we can see at the very bottom, those with fewest votes get eliminated. So Larry Lionel Young Jr. will not be able to move on to round 2, unfortunately, but the votes of that candidate will transfer over to the voter's second choice, right? And so we see the process take its course here. We see those with the fewest votes through each round get eliminated, but those votes get transferred over to the third and fourth options of people, or choices of people, top choices. And we finally, you know, on a closer look, let's take a look. We see that in round 5, we see that Lynette Gibson McElhaney wins it with 42.73% of the votes. And this is with ranked choice voting. Okay, so recapping, local elections matter, right? And we learned that they matter because they impact us locally. Everything from the way our schools are being funded, from the conditions that we live in our communities, in the buildings that we live, in our homes, right? They impact us, right? And so we have a voice in the community that is our local elected officials, our council members, for instance. They have a big voice in the community. And so it's why it's so important, you know, we urge you to, you know, be part of the process and make sure that you're electing candidates that are really gonna look after the interests of the community. Ranked choice voting means instead of just voting for one candidate, you can now rank up to 5 candidates based on your preference. You always get to vote your favorite first. You vote for your true preference based on your hopes and values. And no more runoff elections or candidates winning with less than a majority, because we have learned that runoffs have a low voter turnout, and they are also very expensive to run. So here are some voter resources, what you need to know before you get to the polls. Make sure that your registration is up to date. This is important because you may have moved, your name may have changed, for instance, or, you know, just be aware that if you're interested in voting in the upcoming primaries on June 22nd, that you need to be affiliated with the party holding those primaries, right? So one way to find out is by going to nycvoter.search.com. My colleague Tirtho, he's gonna be posting these links on the chat box, or you can call 866-868-3692. And Before you get to the polls, again, find out who's on the ballot. Where do these candidates stand on the issues you care about, right? And so one way to find out about these candidates is by going to voting.nyc. You're going to click on Meet the Candidates, and you will see a similar page that you see to your right. And so, yeah, so it's very important that this is a place for you to identify who those candidates are and what issues or where they stand on the issues you care about. And make a plan to vote. Are you voting by mail? Are you voting early? Are you voting on election day? You can, and Tirtha is going to put up this link. So it's too long for me to say it, but yeah, we encourage you to, get up the most up-to-date information, and you can find it here at this link if you're interested, and getting more information about your poll site and all of that. Again, regarding the poll site, find my poll site, vote.nyc, for instance. This is a great way for you to find out your early poll site and your election day poll site as well. And to request an absentee ballot, or if you're interested in voting by mail, you can go to the nycabsentee.com link you see there. All right, your rights as a New York voter, what to know at the polls. So in any election, you have a right to be assisted by any person of your choice. This could be your friend, a family member, or a trusted neighbor. There are some exceptions, of course, not recommended for you to bring your employer or union representative. But at the poll site, you will also have trained poll workers, right, that are able to assist you with the process, right, or that are able to answer your questions. If you need an interpreter, the Board of Elections interpreters, they have interpreters that speak your language, but we recommend that you reach out to the Board of Elections first, just to make sure that they will have the interpreters available at the poll site that you go to vote. And you can call 866-VOTE-NYC. And again, election workers are there to assist you, to answer your questions. Vote even if the voting machine is broken, right? And vote by affidavit ballot if your name is missing from the list of voters at your poll site. And once you're at the polling station, you don't need to provide an ID unless if you're voting for the first time. And you didn't include the last 4 digits of your social or your driver's license on your registration form. In that case, there may be a chance that they may ask you to provide an ID. And acceptable forms of ID include a valid photo ID, a current utility bill, a bank statement, a government check or paycheck, or government document that shows your name and address. And if you cannot or choose not to show an identification, you have the right to vote by affidavit ballot. And finally, as we close here, the work that we do here at Democracy NYC depends on volunteers, right? And the picture you see there to your right, this was taken actually in 2020 for our student voter registration drive. We were able to register and pre-register 30,000 students. We were in 50 schools, and this was made possible through support from hundreds of volunteers that came out. And very similar to last year as well, for the general elections, we had hundreds of volunteers that came out to educate New Yorkers about the different ways they can vote, whether that is early voting or voting by absentee or voting on election day. So, and of course, this year we have the important task ahead of us, right, to educate New Yorkers about this new system of voting, ranked choice voting. So join Democracy NYC to help New Yorkers make their voices heard at the ballot box on May 25th. And there's the link there, and Tirtha is going to be putting up those links. Please join us and help us get out the vote. There's going to be a lot of days of action, especially for the early voting piece. So that's coming up, and help us make sure every New Yorker understands how to vote by posting on social media. And yeah, and so tell a friend to tell a friend about what you've learned tonight. So great. So at this moment, we're going to open it up to some questions and answers. But before we do that, I just want to, we want to share our information here. If you want to reach out to us, you can also go to our website and check us out. We have a lot of resources there, information about the work we do. And before we go into the questions and answers, I'm now gonna pull the results, right, of how you voted. So here we have, this is a collection of other people that have voted. Of course, this doesn't only include the group that is here tonight, but basically I'm going to break down how the process turned out, right? So we see that a candidate was unable to receive at least 50% of the votes. So it set off the rounds, right? We see that this went into 11 rounds. And as a reminder, those with the fewest votes, they will start to get eliminated, but the votes of that eliminated candidate will transfer over to the second options of voters, right? And so on. So let's take a look here at what happened. So we see that, the course of each round, we see those with fewest votes at the bottom begin to get eliminated, and the votes gets transferred over to the other options of people, right? Central Park ends up with 1,181 votes, and Brooklyn Bridge ends up with 605. And the cool thing about this tool is that you can also get more information about how those votes were tabulated. And this helps you to understand a bit more about that. So yeah, so now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm gonna open it up for some questions or comments. And let me take a look at the chat. Okay, so. I want to give a special thanks to Tirtho. Thank you for coming in today, man, and helping me out with the chat, with the links, putting the links in the chat box. Thank you, and to the office of the Borough President as well for allowing us to be here as well and doing this presentation. Thank you so much. But yeah, I'm ready for some questions, some comments.
Thank you, Nestor. So there is a question on the chat box from Jessica Tang.
On the chat box?
Yeah,
okay.
All the way at the end.
Are you able to read it?
Yes, sure. So what do you mean when you say vote even when the voting machine is broken?
Right. So I think that at some point we've all heard that, the machines are broken in certain poll sites. And so this creates a big problem because it creates the idea that maybe there's voter suppression or anything like that. But, at the polling site, there are measures that are taken, right, if a machine is broken. And so there is a staff that is able to solve the problem in getting a new machine or fixing the issue. But essentially what we're saying is that don't let that stop you from voting. There is a process that the staff or the poll workers have, and inform you about the other ways that you can submit that vote. But essentially, don't let that stop you, essentially.
Thank you. We have another question. And it's basically, there are so many people running for office, it's overwhelming. What do you recommend?
Wow. So we mentioned at the beginning that we are nonpartisan, first of all. There are a lot of candidates running in different, for different offices, right, in different areas. So, I think it's going to be interesting. Is an interesting question for folks. What do you believe in? Which of these candidates, best comes closest to your values, to your principles, right? To what you want in a candidate. So I think it starts from there, figuring that out. But it is an individual question, and it depends about where you live, about your values and all of that. But I agree, there's a lot of candidates, and could be confusing, it could be daunting to figure out who you're going to vote for.
Nestor, if I may, I also think that there's a lot of information on the internet, especially some of the debates for certain candidates, that you can go back and watch so you can hear from them directly how they feel on certain issues. So I would also recommend perhaps figuring out which of the races pertain to your district and go back and take a look at some of the debates.
Right. Right, absolutely. And also, we put out a link, that you can find out more about these candidates. And this is information that they put out. It's not like the Board of Election, is coming up, or the Campaign Finance Board is coming out with this information. So these candidates are submitting their information to put on these platforms, and so that's another way for you to identify, where do candidates stand on different issues. So let's see.
Nestor,
Talk to me. Yeah.
there's one point I like to quickly bring up. There's this common idea floating around when I've been speaking to people that they feel somewhat discouraged by ranking other candidates who are not their first choice. The kind of misconception is they feel like if they rank someone second or third or fourth, that lowers the chances of their first choice candidate. Could you kind of maybe reiterate why that's maybe not the case and why you should take advantage of all 5 choices that people are given?
Right. So, the way it works is like this. You can choose up to 5 candidates, right, in order of preference, but you don't have to choose up to 5 candidates. We encourage people to rank more because it gives you more of a voice, right, of a say. So if you have a second choice, for instance, or you may have a third choice, there is still a chance you're still part of that process, because if you just choose one candidate, for instance, and that candidate gets eliminated, you're basically you're out. So we encourage people to think about other options as well, but we don't want to force someone, or to push an idea that you have to rank up to 5 candidates. But it's someone's individual choice. To answer directly your question, it doesn't really impact. It doesn't affect the candidate that you choose in first place. And instead, it gives you more opportunity, right? Like I said before, if your candidate gets eliminated, now you have a second choice, and maybe that candidate, wins, or your third choice wins as well. So, but yeah.
Nestor, so we do have another question. So it's if a candidate is a second choice, is that rank of equal weight as a first choice?
So if I understand the question, if you have two choices, right? If you have a first choice and you have a second choice, right? Can you
Sure, sure. If a candidate is a second choice, is that rank of equal weight as a first choice? So yeah,
Yeah, eventually it is, because if your first choice gets eliminated, now your second choice is still there, right? So that when it goes into the round two, right, it's now you have that candidate that that you ranked in second. Now they have a new slate. They're able to now they're going to be ranked, and hopefully they're going to remain for the following rounds, but I say that the way that I would see it is that having those two candidates actually is really is great, right? Because if your first candidate gets eliminated, then you still have your second choice there that has an opportunity to advance into the other rounds, if that answers the question. Voting.NYC. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tirtha.
sure. Any other questions?
Or comments.
Well, thank you very much. We know that our Board of Elections will be working overtime. And this is such an exciting, really inflection point for New York City to be moving into a completely new way of voting. And we hope that it will result in empowering so many more people and encouraging voter participation. So I cannot thank you enough on behalf of Borough President Richards. Please do spread the word, our attendees and our partners. We want to make sure that we break records with the voting participation. This is an interesting way, as Nestor said, to make sure that our votes get counted, and your second and third and fourth votes get counted if your first somehow doesn't make it. And so we encourage you to make sure that you read up on the candidates and start voting as early as possible in just 4 days from now. Would you like to give any other closing tips or remarks on behalf of Democracy NYC?
Absolutely. And thank you once again for this opportunity to the Borough President's office for allowing us to be here today, to Timothy, to the staff here tonight for making this possible. So we want to encourage those that have the ability, that are able to help us to educate people about ranked choice voting. We put the link up in the chat box. Sign up. We need the support, and we're going to be doing a lot of in-person stuff as well. And so, but reaching out to folks is really important. Don't forget that we, June 12th through the 20th, we have early voting, and practically, there is no excuse for you not to vote. When you start thinking about early voting, you start thinking about the day of election and voting by absentee as well. So yes, take part in that. Think about local elections, how important they are. They impact us locally, right? Everything from the way our schools are being funded, from the living conditions in our communities, and so we want to make sure that we are part of that process in electing people that are going to look after the interests of our neighborhoods, our communities. So take that with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Nestor. Thank you, Tim, for leading this initiative for the Borough President. And we also have to thank, on behalf of Borough President Richards, Chris, Carolina, Tiffany. I see Michael Mallon there as well from our team. We are hosting another event on Thursday at 6:30 with a few organizations, including Chaya and Jahaji Sisters. And so please, we have just dropped that in the link as well. Please join us again. We'll have an explanation of ranked choice voting again from some other folks in the community that are working across the city. And you can hear it once, hear it twice. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times for it to really digest. So never enough education in this area because it is such a new thing that we're experiencing. We've only had a few trial runs, but they were not citywide. So this is so exciting. Do come if you're in Queens and stop by. If you're coming to vote early, we are back in business at Borough Hall, and we have more information here as well. So do not hesitate to reach out to Tim or myself for more information on how we can help spread the word about all of these programs over the next few weeks. There'll be many more, and next week we're having a week of action at Borough Hall. I'm not sure if Tim wants to drop more information or talk a little bit more about that, but we'll be all throughout the borough sharing more information about ranked choice voting.
Thank you, Deputy Borough President. That is correct. Next week, which happens to be early voting week, we will be initiating a week of action, ranked choice voting awareness and early voting awareness tabling at 5 different locations throughout Queens. So the Monday through Friday of early voting. I will drop in the chat box a Facebook events link where all of this information is located. So we encourage all of you who are listening to stop by, participate. If you have any questions, if you know of anyone in your community who has questions, feel free to direct them to those sites and we'll be on site ready, prepared to answer everyone's questions.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks again to the Civic Engagement Committee on behalf of Borough President Richards. And we encourage you to rock that vote, participate in this historic election.